I did not leave because I was heartbroken. I left because I recognized a critical system vulnerability in the home I owned. He mistook my nod for surrender, but it was actually the authorization for a full audit. 3 weeks later, a single internal email confirmed that the entire party had been a staged event designed to frame me as a liability. My name is Marissa Cole. I am 33 years old, and I work in risk and compliance operations for Holloway Signal Systems in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My entire professional life is built on a single, unyielding principle, which is finding the hairline fracture in a steel beam before the bridge collapses. I do not wait for the explosion. I look for the frayed wire behind the drywall that everyone else ignores. I live my life by auditing the things that seem too good to be true, ensuring that every variable is accounted for and every liability is insured. It was this love for logistics that made me trust Evan Kessler. He was 36, a sales manager at Stone Ridge Freight Partners, and he did not court me with poetry or grand, chaotic gestures. He wooed me with stability. He spoke about life as if it were a balanced spreadsheet, where every action had a clear, projected outcome. I thought I had finally found a partner who understood that romance was not about drama, but about two systems running in perfect synchronization. When Evan suggested he move into my house, the colonial revival I had purchased with my own savings, he did not frame it as a romantic milestone. He pitched it to me like a business merger. It just makes sense for capital efficiency. Marissa, he had said, sitting at my kitchen island with his hands clasped together, think about the overhead we are wasting. If I move in, we cut living costs by 40%. We can funnel that liquidity into a joint high-yield portfolio. Why pay 2 mortgages when we are building one future? It sounded smart. It sounded responsible. So I agreed. But over the last 6 months, I began to notice that the ledger was unbalanced. The operational costs were entirely mine. I paid the mortgage. I paid the utilities. I bought the groceries. Evan was always reinvesting his salary into networking opportunities or his own student loans. I was the one editing his slide decks at 2 a.m. because he needed to impress the board. I was the one organizing his calendar. I was the chief operating officer of a relationship where he was the only shareholder receiving dividends. Then the anomaly appeared. Her name was Sloane Hart. At first, she was just a data point he dropped into conversation. I ran into Sloane Hart today. He mentioned once while I was folding his laundry. She is consulting for a few firms in the logistics chain now. She is aggressive in the market. Good contacts. He said it with a professional detachment that felt practiced, but the frequency of her name began to increase. Sloane was at the regional conference. Sloane had a lead on a potential client. Sloane was just someone in the industry. But my internal alarm system, the one that had saved my company millions in avoided lawsuits, began to hum. I started seeing discrepancies. There was a charge on our joint credit card for $92 at a boutique gift shop downtown. When I asked, Evan smiled that easy, charming smile of his. "It is just a retirement gift for a colleague," he said smoothly. "Old Janice in accounting is finally leaving. Do not worry about it." Then there were the late-night notifications. His phone would light up on the nightstand at 11 at night, and he would flip it over with a reflex speed that was too sharp for a man half asleep. "Who is texting you this late?" I asked one night, keeping my voice flat. "It is just a work crisis," he muttered, turning his back to me. "Logistics nightmare in the supply chain. You know how it is. Marissa, don't start imagining things. You need to relax." His answer came out too fast. In my line of work, speed is often a cover for lack of substance. I told myself to stop. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was projecting my workplace stress onto a good man. But the instinct that paid my bills refused to be silenced. The night before the party, I did not sleep. I sat downstairs in the dark, bathed in the blue light of my laptop. I did not search his phone. I did not look through his pockets. Instead, I did what I do best. I audited the infrastructure. I logged into the router admin portal to check device connections. I reviewed the access logs for the smart lock on the front door. I downloaded a fresh copy of my property deed from the county website and moved it to an encrypted folder. I told myself I was just organizing my personal files. I told myself this was just routine maintenance. But as I stared at the screen, watching the cursor blink, I knew the truth. I was not organizing. I was backing up my data because I knew the system was about to crash. The deadline dropped with the weight of a sudden audit requirement. Evan burst through the front door on Thursday evening, vibrating with a manic sort of energy that usually signaled a sales closing. But this time, it was personal. "I made the short list," he announced, loosening his tie as he paced the kitchen. "The regional vice president is flying in from Chicago. He wants to see social compatibility. I need to host a mixer here. Saturday night." Saturday, I looked up from my laptop, calculating the impossible logistics. "Evan, that is 48 hours from now." I know," he said, waving a hand dismissively. "But this is it. Marissa, this is the director seat. I need the house to look incredible. I need the guest list packed. The more people, the better. It needs to look like I am the center of gravity in this town." I did not argue. I did not complain about the short notice or the fact that I had a compliance report due Monday. I simply shifted gears. I went into operational overdrive. I hired an emergency cleaning crew to scour the floors until the hardwood gleamed like glass. I contacted a high-end catering service and paid a 30% rush fee to secure 500 canapes. I curated a playlist that was upbeat but ambient, adjusted the smart lighting to a warm amber hue, and rearranged the living room furniture to maximize flow. I treated our home like a venue and the party like a project to be managed. In the middle of coordinating the wine delivery, my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a transaction alert from our joint account. $92. The merchant name was Timeless Frames and Keepsakes. I stared at the screen. It was the exact same amount, from a similar category of store, as the charge I had seen weeks ago. I found Evan in the bedroom, trying on different suit jackets. "Evan," I asked, holding up the phone, "what is this charge for $92? He did not even blink. He adjusted his cufflinks in the mirror, smoothing the fabric with practiced ease. "Oh, that," he said lightly. "I told you. It is the retirement gift for Janice in accounting. We all chipped in, but I put it on the card to get the points. They will reimburse me next week." The lie was seamless. It was too smooth. But before I could cross-examine him, the doorbell rang. It was Kara Whitman, my best friend, carrying 2 bags of ice and a look of mild concern. She had come early to help set up, but as she started unpacking the bags in the kitchen, her hesitation was palpable. "So?" Kara said, avoiding my eyes as she dumped ice into the silver bucket. "I was looking at the Facebook event page Evan made. It is quite the list. He wants a crowd," I said, arranging napkins with geometric precision. "Yeah." Kara paused, then let out a breath. I saw that Sloan Hart clicked going on the invite. My hand froze over the napkins. The air in the kitchen seemed to vanish. "Sloan is coming here," I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "I thought you knew," Kara said quickly, looking guilty. "Maybe it is just a courtesy click. You know how people are." I left Kara in the kitchen and walked straight to the den where Evan was pouring himself a pre-party scotch. "Sloan is coming," I stated. It was not a question. Evan sighed, a dramatic exhalation that suggested I was being incredibly unreasonable. "Marissa, please," he said, turning to face me with a look of exhausted patience. "She is a major player in logistics now. If I do not invite her, it looks petty. The VP knows her. This is networking. Do not make this about your insecurities." "Insecurities," I repeated. "You invited your ex-girlfriend to our home without telling me." "You are overreacting," he snapped, stepping closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Look, I need you to be perfect tonight. I need my supportive, charming partner. Do not give me that audit energy of yours. Do not look for problems where there aren't any." And please, Marissa, do not embarrass me in front of the boss. The words hit me like a physical slap. Audit energy. He was weaponizing my competence against me. I went upstairs to dress. I chose a dress I had bought years ago but rarely wore. It was black, structured, and sharp enough to cut glass. It was not a dress for a hostess. It was a dress for a boardroom execution. As I zipped it up, I felt a shift in my chest. The part of me that wanted to be loved was quietly stepped aside by the part of me that assessed risk. I was no longer looking at Evan as my boyfriend. I was looking at him as a liability. I walked to the window to check the driveway. A car was pulling up to the gate. I watched as the driver punched in the code and the gate swung open. I froze. I had changed the gate code yesterday morning for security purposes. I had not given the new code to anyone yet. Not even Kara knew it. But the car glided through effortlessly. Evan had the new code. Obviously. But that meant he had sent it out specifically to someone who arrived before the official start time. I took a deep breath, smoothing the fabric of my dress. Do not scream. I told myself. Do not throw him out yet. Do not give him the excuse to call you the crazy woman. I checked my reflection one last time. The woman staring back was not smiling. She was calculating. The party reached critical mass by 8 o'clock. My living room, usually a sanctuary of order, was now a chaotic ecosystem of ambition and cheap cologne. Evan was in his element. He moved through the crowd of 50 people like a politician, shaking hands and clapping backs, his laughter ringing out a little too loudly. When the regional vice president arrived, a heavy-set man with a grip like a vice, Evan pulled me forward. "And this is Marissa," Evan said, draping an arm around my waist that felt less like an embrace and more like a clamp. "She is the one who makes the trains run on time. Absolute logistics machine. I would be lost without her organizing my life." The vice president laughed, and the circle of men nodded approvingly. It sounded like a compliment, but I knew better. It was a classification. He was the vision. I was the staff. He was the architect. I was the janitor. I smiled the thin, tight smile of an employee who knows she is being undervalued but cannot cause a scene in the boardroom. Then the doorbell rang. It was late, almost 9 o'clock. I opened the door and felt the air leave my lungs. Sloane Hart stood on my porch. She looked immaculate. But what froze my blood was not her beauty. It was the color of her dress. It was a deep, specific emerald green, the exact same shade as the custom table runners and napkins I had spent 3 days sourcing. She did not just fit into the party. She matched the branding. She knew the theme. "Marissa," she said, her voice smooth and devoid of warmth. Evan said to just walk in. She breezed past me with the entitlement of someone who held the deed to the property. When she entered the living room, Evan did not look surprised. He looked relieved. He looked like a man who had been holding his breath and could finally exhale. She handed him a small, gift-wrapped box. "I saw this and thought of you. For the portfolio." Evan tore open the paper to reveal a vintage camera lens filter, a rare piece of equipment for the photography hobby he had supposedly picked up last month. He beamed, holding it up to the light. "Incredible," he said. "Sloane, you have the best eye." I stood at the edge of the circle, my mind racing. I flashed back to the credit card statement. $92, timeless frames and keepsakes. The price of that vintage filter was almost certainly $92. He had bought his own gift for her to give to him. It was a staged transaction, designed to elevate her status in front of his boss while using my credit line to fund the performance. Sloane turned to me, swirling her wine glass. "Evan tells me you are very structured, Marissa. I suppose that is good for the household. I do not think you would enjoy our late-night photo shoots, though we tend to get a little chaotic. You like your sleep schedules too much." It was a dig wrapped in a casual observation. She was painting me as the bore, the buzzkill, the mother figure who dampened the fun. I walked away to check the bar, needing to recalibrate. When I returned 10 minutes later, I found them in the hallway leading to the guest bath. They were standing too close. Not kissing, but existing in a private sphere of intimacy that excluded the rest of the world. Sloane was whispering something, and Evan was leaning down, listening with an intensity he had never shown me in 2 years. I cleared my throat. Evan looked up. He did not look guilty. He looked annoyed. "Evan," I said, keeping my voice level, "the vice president is looking for you, and we are out of ice." It was a standard host prompt, a reminder of his duty. Evan's expression hardened. He grabbed my upper arm, his fingers digging into the soft flesh, and steered me forcefully away from Sloane, pulling me toward the kitchen door where the crowd was thinner. "Stop it," he hissed. "Stop what I asked," pulling my arm back. "I am telling you to attend to your boss." "You are hovering," he said, his voice rising. He was not whispering anymore. He wanted people to hear. "You are staring at us. It is weird. Marissa, you are making Sloane uncomfortable with this jealousy." He was rewriting the narrative in real time. Heads turned. The conversation in the kitchen died down. I saw Kara staring at us with wide eyes. "I am not jealous," I said, my voice trembling slightly despite my best efforts. "I am hosting your party." "You are obsessing," Evan shouted now. He gestured wildly toward the hallway where Sloane stood, looking fragile and victimized. "God, can't you just be normal for one night? You are suffocating everyone." The room went silent. The vice president was watching. My neighbors were watching. Evan looked at me with cold, dead eyes and delivered the final blow. "Leave," he said. "You're making her uncomfortable." I stood there, frozen. The absurdity of it washed over me. He was telling me to leave my own house, the house I paid for, the house I cleaned, the house where his name was not on the deed. He expected me to scream. He expected me to cry and beg and prove him right by acting like the crazy woman he had described to everyone. Instead, I looked at him. I looked at the man who thought he could bankrupt me emotionally and financially. I looked at the vulnerability in my system. I nodded. It was a sharp, single motion. I did not speak. I simply accepted the instruction. I turned around and walked toward the door, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor I paid to maintain. I was not leaving because I was defeated. I was leaving to start the paperwork. I walked out of my front door with the steady, rhythmic pace of a woman clocking out of a shift. I did not slam the door. I did not look back at the windows where the bass of the music was still vibrating against the glass. I got into my car, adjusted the rearview mirror, and drove 3 miles to a 24-hour diner called the Iron Skillet. I needed a neutral location with a secure Wi-Fi connection. I sat in a booth, ordered black coffee, and opened my banking app. It was time to regain bandwidth. The first step was the financial extraction. I looked at the joint savings account. The balance was $12,450. I pulled up my mental spreadsheet. I calculated exactly what I had contributed versus what Evan had put in over the last 6 months. I initiated a transfer of $8,200 back into my personal checking account. I left him the remainder. It was not a theft. It was a final payroll adjustment. Next came the digital infrastructure. I went down the list of utilities: electric, water, internet. Evan was listed as an authorized user on all of them. I removed him, one by one. I watched his name disappear from the screen. Then came the streaming services. I changed the passwords to randomized strings of 20 characters. I hit the button that said, "Sign out of all devices." Somewhere back at the house, the TV playing the ambient visualizers for his party would suddenly go black, but I did not smile. This was just system maintenance. I finished my coffee and drove back to the house. I parked down the street and entered through the side garage door to avoid the main party. The noise was a dull roar above me, footsteps thumping on the ceiling of the garage. I slipped up the back stairs into the master bedroom and locked the door behind me. I pulled 2 large suitcases from the closet and began the relocation protocol. My movements were precise. I did not throw his clothes. I folded them. I coiled his charging cables. I packed his toiletries. However, I was strictly auditing ownership. I packed his shirts, but I kept the expensive wooden hangers I had bought. I packed his tablet, but I unplugged it from the high-speed charger I had purchased. I was not looting. I was curating based on the initial asset ledger. 30 minutes later, I wheeled the suitcases out to the garage. I lined them up against the wall with military precision. I tore a page from my notebook, wrote 5 words, and taped it to the handle of his carry-on. Now, nobody's uncomfortable. I picked up my phone and called a 24-hour locksmith service. I have a security breach. I told the dispatcher when she answered. I need a residential rekey. Tonight, I have reason to believe unauthorized keys are in circulation. We can have someone there in 45 minutes, the dispatcher said. Perfect, I replied. Before I left the house for the final time, I went back to the bedroom to check the nightstand. Evan had a habit of shoving paperwork into the bottom drawer beneath his socks. I reached in and felt the crinkle of a manila envelope. It bore the logo of the Human Resources Department at Stone Ridge Freight Partners. I opened it. Inside was a transfer confirmation. Evan had been approved for a permanent relocation to the Denver office. The approval date was 3 weeks ago. Clipped to the formal letter was a sticky note with a handwritten message in ink. Glad we made this work for you and Sloan. See you in the Mile High City. I stared at the paper. He had not just cheated on me. He had planned a complete exit strategy using my resources to launch his new life with her. He was letting me fund his transition period. I did not cry. I folded the letter and put it in my purse. This was no longer a breakup. This was evidence. The morning after the party, my phone did not stop vibrating. It buzzed across the nightstand like an angry insect. Evan had left 14 voicemails ranging from legal threats to tearful pleas. You cannot just lock me out of my own home. Marissa, one voicemail screamed, his voice cracking. I have rights. I will call the police. The next message, time-stamped 10 minutes later, was soft and wheedling. Baby, please. You are overreacting. We can talk about this. Sloan is just a friend. Then came the text from Sloan herself. This is incredibly childish. Grow up. Marissa, you are embarrassing yourself. I did not type a response. I took screenshots of every message, saved the voicemails to a cloud drive, and then blocked both numbers. When Evan's mother called me an hour later, demanding to know why her son was sleeping in a motel, I did not offer an explanation. I simply texted her 2 images. The first was a photo of the property deed with my name highlighted in yellow. The second was a photo of his suitcases sitting lonely and wet in the driveway where I had moved them that morning. I added no caption. I let the documentation speak for itself. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. 3 days later, I was summoned to the office of the Human Resources Director at Holloway Signal Systems. When I walked in, the head of IT security was standing by the window. My stomach dropped. In the world of risk compliance, this meeting configuration never meant a promotion. It meant an investigation. Marissa, please sit down, the HR director said, her face grim. We have flagged a serious violation of our data security protocols originating from your assigned workstation. The IT head turned a monitor toward me. Last Tuesday at 10:45 at night, a compressed file containing sensitive client bid data and proprietary schematics was uploaded from your laptop. It was sent via a personal webmail account. I looked at the screen. The webmail address was a variation of Evan's name. The memory hit me with the force of a physical blow. Last Tuesday, we were in the living room. Evan had looked frustrated, tapping at his phone. Marissa, he had said, looking up with that helpless puppy dog expression he perfected. My phone is glitching and I need to print a return label for Amazon. Can I just borrow your laptop for 2 seconds? The printer is already synced to it. I had unlocked it for him. I had trusted him. I had gone to the kitchen to make tea while he effectively framed me for corporate espionage. I did not send that file. I said. My voice was steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. But I know who did. The login came from your home network, Marissa, the IT head said, and the user account on the machine was yours. This data, if this gets out to a competitor, it compromises our leverage in the upcoming state infrastructure bid. This looks like collusion. It is not collusion, I said, locking eyes with him. It is identity theft and unauthorized access. I am requesting a full forensic audit. Check the browser history timestamps against the file upload. Check the keystroke dynamics if you have the logger active. I will sign a sworn affidavit right now stating I did not authorize that transmission. I did not cry. I did not beg for my job. I treated it like a case study. I gave them the timeline. I offered my phone for cross-referencing. They put me on paid administrative leave pending the investigation. It was a polite way of saying I was a suspect. As I walked out to my car, carrying a box of my personal effects, I realized the full scope of Evan's plan. I drove home and immediately opened a new spreadsheet. I called it the dossier. I created columns for dates, sources, allegations, and counter-evidence. That evening, a former colleague from Evan's firm messaged me. Hey, just a heads up. Evan is telling people you had a mental break. He says you started leaking work documents to get back at him because you were paranoid about his career. He is spinning this like he is the victim of a vindictive ex. I stared at the screen. The pieces clicked together. He knew I would find out about Sloan. He knew I would kick him out. The data leak was not just for profit. It was an insurance policy. If I tried to expose his affair or his financial leeching, he would point to the leak as proof that I was unstable and vindictive. He was not just trying to leave me. He was trying to destroy my credibility so that no one would believe me when I finally spoke. He wanted me to be too afraid of a lawsuit to open my mouth. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Okay, Evan, I whispered to the empty room. You want to play with legal documents? Let's see who reads the fine print better. Unemployed but fully operational, I spent the next morning conducting a forensic accounting of my own life. I pulled 3 years of credit card statements and began the tedious work of separating legitimate household expenses from the parasites. I found them buried in the recurring charges. There was a monthly fee of $49 for a premium web hosting service. There was a subscription to a high-end sales lead generator for $200 a month. There were payments to freelance graphic designers for logo concepts. I clicked on the transaction details for the web hosting. The invoice memo read Project Northmark. I searched the name. It was a landing page for a next-generation freight brokerage platform. It promised to revolutionize logistics using proprietary predictive data. I realized then that Evan had not just been cheating on me emotionally. He had been funding his startup with my salary while he saved his own money for the escape. I did not scream. I opened a fresh email draft. Evan. I typed. Attached is an itemized invoice for unauthorized business expenses charged to my personal credit card totaling $4,312. Please remit payment within 48 hours to avoid small claims litigation. His response came via text 3 minutes later. You are delusional. I am not paying you a dime. Keep pushing this and I will sue you for harassment. Everyone already thinks you are crazy. Marissa, do not make it worse for yourself. I did not reply. I took a screenshot of the threat, dated and time-stamped it, and dropped it into the dossier file. An hour later, my doorbell rang. It was Sloan. She was not wearing her party dress this time. She was wearing a tailored blazer and jeans, trying to project an image of casual authority. I opened the door but left the chain lock engaged. Marissa, she said, offering a tight, pitying smile. Can we just talk woman to woman for a second? Evan is really worried about you. I doubt that, I said flatly. Look, she sighed, stepping closer to the crack in the door. We know you are upset, but this investigation you triggered at his office, the data leak accusation, it is getting messy. You need to drop it. If you keep trying to sabotage his career, we will have to file a restraining order. And with your current mental state, no judge will side with you." "Is that a threat?" I asked. "It is a reality check," Sloane snapped, her mask slipping. "Project Northmark is the future. We have investors lined up. We have beta data from highly reliable industry sources. We are not going to let a bitter ex-girlfriend derail a multi-million-dollar launch." My eyes narrowed. Beta data from industry sources. She had just confirmed it. The file sent from my laptop, the sensitive client bid data from Holloway Signal Systems, was the foundation of their entire business model. They had stolen my company's data to build their algorithm. "Get off my porch," I said. "Fine." She huffed. "But remember, nobody listens to the hysterical woman." She walked away, confident she had won. I closed the door and immediately went to my computer. Since the web hosting for Project Northmark was paid for by my credit card, I was technically the account administrator. I logged in. I did not delete the site. That would be malicious destruction of property. Instead, I went to the billing section. I removed my primary credit card and replaced it with an old prepaid Visa gift card I had found in a drawer. It had a remaining balance of exactly $2.14. The next hosting renewal fee was due in 48 hours. When the charge for $49 attempted to clear, it would be declined. The hosting provider's automated system would then suspend the site immediately. I was not sabotaging them. I was simply ceasing to subsidize them. Before logging out, I downloaded the server activity logs. They showed upload times that perfectly matched the data exfiltration from my work laptop. I saved the file to an external drive. Then, I drafted a formal legal hold notice to the hosting provider, demanding they preserve all current server snapshots due to pending litigation regarding identity fraud. I sat back, my heart beating with the slow, steady rhythm of a predator. My inbox chimed. It was an email from the Regional Transport Association. "You are invited to the annual logistics gala at the Riverside Meridian Ballroom. Keynote presentation. The founders of Project Northmark." I stared at the invitation. It was happening this Saturday. They were going to launch their stolen company in front of the entire industry. I moved my cursor to the RSVP button. "Yes," I whispered. I clicked confirm. I was going to that gala, and I was going to bring the receipts. I did not walk into the law office of Robert Haynes to complain about a broken heart. I walked in to formalize a liability. Robert was a contract attorney who specialized in fraud, and he looked at my stack of papers with the appreciation of a man who rarely saw clients this organized. We spent 3 hours converting my spreadsheet into a legal weapon. We notarized the affidavit regarding the unauthorized data transfer. We certified the timeline of the credit card theft. We made 3 high-resolution color copies of the letter from Human Resources confirming Evan's transfer to Denver with Sloane. "This is solid," Robert said, tapping the stack of papers against his mahogany desk. "But I want to run a quick title check on your property. Just to be thorough, if he is this entitled regarding your bank account, we should check the deed." He typed into his terminal for a moment, and then his eyebrows pulled together. "Marissa," he said, his voice dropping an octave, "there is a pending request in the county clerk system. It was filed 48 hours ago. Someone attempted to update the mailing address for all tax notices and legal correspondence related to your home." I felt a cold chill slide down my spine. Evan was not just trying to steal my money. He was trying to redirect the paperwork so I would not see what he was doing. He was trying to keep a foothold in a house he had been evicted from. "Lock it," I said instantly. "File a fraud alert. Place a freeze on the title. I want it so that he cannot even look at the Zillow listing without triggering a notification on my phone." "Done," Robert said. "He is reckless. Marissa, that is good for us. Reckless people make mistakes." I left the office with a new understanding of the battlefield. Evan was not just a cheating ex-boyfriend. He was a hostile entity. I met Kara at a coffee shop downtown. She looked nervous, twisting her napkin into a tight spiral. I am not asking you to make a scene. I told her, sliding a coffee across the table. I need a witness, a neutral party. Your job is to observe. If he screams, you record. If I start to lose my temper, you stop me. But I do not intend to lose my temper. He is going to have security there. Marissa, Kara said quietly. He has been posting about this gala all week. He is acting like he is the keynote speaker of the century. He is the keynote speaker, I corrected her. I am just the fact checker. I went home and assembled the packages. I did not make digital blasts on social media. I did not write a tearful Facebook status. Instead, I prepared 3 physical manila envelopes. One was addressed to the General Counsel of Stone Ridge Freight Partners. One was for the event coordinator of the Riverside Meridian Ballroom. The third was for the lead investor Evan had been bragging about for months. Inside each envelope was the timeline, the proof of the data breach, and the credit card fraud logs linked to Project Northmark. I was not going to destroy his reputation with gossip. I was going to place the risk right on the table where the money sat. Corporations do not care about adultery, but they are terrified of litigation. I spent the rest of the afternoon in front of my mirror, practicing my lines. I stripped every ounce of emotion from my voice. I practiced speaking until I sounded like a deposition. I am here to clarify the ownership of the intellectual property being presented today. The funds used to secure this domain are currently under dispute in small claims court. My phone buzzed on the vanity. It was Evan. Do not even think about showing up tonight. Security has your photo. You will be humiliated. Stay home, Marissa, for your own good. I did not reply. I took a screenshot and dragged it into the folder named Harassment Logs. I walked to my closet. I pushed aside the black dress I had worn the night he kicked me out. I reached for something else. It was a dress in a shade of red so sharp it looked like a laceration. It was structured, tailored, and aggressive. It was not a dress designed to make a man miss me. It was the color of a stop sign. It was the color of a hazard light flashing on a dashboard. I zipped it up and looked at myself in the glass. I did not look like a victim. I looked like an auditor arriving for a surprise inspection. I am not coming to beg. Evan, I said to the empty room, I am coming to balance the books. The Riverside Meridian Ballroom was designed to intimidate. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen explosions, and the air smelled of expensive perfume and venture capital. I spotted Evan immediately. He was standing in the center of the room, holding a glass of champagne, surrounded by a circle of men in dark suits. He looked like the winner he believed he was. I moved closer, keeping to the edge of his orbit. He was in the middle of a story. His voice projected just loud enough to draw an audience. Honestly, it was about focus, Evan was saying, gesturing with his free hand. Sometimes you have to cut the dead weight to let the balloon rise. I had people in my life who just did not understand the vision. They were too attached to the status quo, jealous of the grind, if you can believe that. Once I cleared that negativity out, Project Northmark really took off. He was using our breakup as a marketing strategy. He was selling my pain as his efficiency. I stepped into the gap between 2 investors. I did not say a word. I just stood there, the red dress acting like a flare in the sea of gray wool. Evan's smile faltered. The color drained from his face so fast it looked like a medical event. The circle of men fell silent, sensing the sudden drop in atmospheric pressure. Marissa, Evan choked out. He set his glass down on a passing tray with a hand that was visibly shaking. Excuse me, gentlemen. One moment. He grabbed my elbow and pulled me toward a decorative pillar, away from the main group. His grip was clammy. What are you doing? He hissed, his eyes darting around the room to see who was watching. I told you not to come. I told you security has your picture. I have a ticket, I said calmly. I purchased it online under my maiden name. It is a public industry event. Evan, how much do you want? He whispered, the panic rising in his throat. Is that it? You want the money back. I will write you a check right now. Just go. Please. You are going to ruin everything. I do not want your money, I said. And I am not here to make a scene. I am here to ensure that the risk disclosure for this project is handled according to protocol. The files have already been sent to legal counsel. Evan, I am just the physical notification. He stared at me, not understanding. He was so used to me fixing his problems that he could not process that I had become one. He decided to gamble. He stepped back, raising his voice so the investors could hear him, trying to regain control of the narrative. You need to leave, he announced, putting on a mask of pained tolerance. Marissa, please, you are making Sloan uncomfortable. We have moved on. You need to accept that. It was the same line he had used in our living room. Back then, it had been a command. Now, it sounded like a desperate plea. The lead investor, a silver-haired man named Mr. Sterling, stepped forward. He did not look at Evan. He looked at me. What files are you referring to? Ms. Cole Sterling asked. She is crazy. Sloan appeared from the crowd, breathless and sharp. She is stalking us. She is mentally unstable. Don't listen to a word she says. I have the diligence documents right here, I said to Sterling, ignoring Sloan entirely. I placed the manila envelope on the cocktail table next to us. I opened it and laid out 3 sheets of paper. Exhibit A, I said, my voice clear and steady. Credit card statements showing Project Northmark's hosting and data servers were paid for by my personal account without authorization. Exhibit B, network logs confirming the proprietary data for your beta test was exfiltrated from my employer's laptop, creating a liability chain that links your investment to corporate espionage. And Exhibit C, a transfer letter dated 3 weeks ago. Sterling picked up the transfer letter. It says you were moving to Denver. Sterling said, looking at Evan, you told us the headquarters would be here in Pittsburgh. She forged that Sloan shrieked. She is obsessed with him. I pulled out my phone. I navigated to the screenshot of the text message Sloan had sent me the night of the party. I held the screen up for Sterling to see. Read the timestamp, I said. Sterling leaned in. We have been planning the Chicago and Denver move for months. We just needed to push you out to clean the slate. Stop fighting it. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the silence of a deal dying in real time. Sterling looked at Evan. He did not look at him like a genius founder anymore. He looked at him like a bad asset. He looked at him like a compliance violation. Is this true? Sterling asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Is your intellectual property based on stolen data? Is your capital funding actually her stolen credit line? No, Evan stammered. It is. It is complicated. We can explain. In finance. Evan, Sterling said, dropping the paper back onto the table. Complicated usually means fraud. The circle of investors took a collective step back. It was a subtle movement, but it was final. They were distancing themselves from the blast radius. Evan stood alone in the center of the ballroom, the winner's circle suddenly looking very much like a cage. The atmosphere in the ballroom shifted from confused silence to active containment. 3 security guards in dark suits began moving through the crowd, their earpieces buzzing with instructions from the venue management. They were not coming for me. They were coming to stabilize a disruption that was rapidly becoming a liability for the hotel. Evan saw them approaching, and panic overtook his features. He lunged toward the small stage where the microphone stand was waiting for his keynote speech. He tapped the mic violently, sending a screech of feedback through the speakers that made the investors wince. Ladies and gentlemen, if we could just settle down, Evan shouted, his voice cracking. We are starting the presentation now. Ignore the noise. Kara stepped forward then. She did not yell. She simply spoke to the nearest security officer, loud enough for Mr. Sterling and the circle of investors to hear. She has not raised her voice once, Kara said, pointing at me with a steady hand. She is standing still. He is the one screaming. I am an independent witness, and I have been recording audio since we walked in. The only person causing a disturbance here is Mr. Kessler. Her words stripped away Evan's last defense. The crazy ex-girlfriend narrative disintegrated instantly when faced with a calm, corroborated reality. Then came the final blow. The double doors at the back of the room opened, and a man walked in whom I recognized immediately. It was Arthur Vance, the Deputy General Counsel for Stone Ridge Freight Partners. I had overnighted him a package yesterday. Evan froze on the stage. He knew exactly who Arthur was, and he knew that corporate lawyers do not crash parties on Saturday nights unless the company is facing an existential threat. "Evan Kessler," Arthur said, his voice carrying across the hushed room without the need for a microphone. "We received a notification regarding a significant breach of non-compete protocols and data theft. We are here to secure any devices containing proprietary Stone Ridge client lists." The color drained from Evan's face completely. He looked at Arthur, then at the investors who were now backing away from him as if he were radioactive, and finally at Sloane. "It was her," Evan yelled, pointing a shaking finger at Sloane. Sloane set up the transfer. "She told me she had permission. I just did what she said." The alliance of the power couple shattered in less than 5 seconds. Sloane recoiled, her face twisting in disgust. She took a sharp step back, physically distancing herself from him. "I have no idea what he is talking about," Sloane said, her voice icy and detached. "I am just a consultant. I barely know the technical side of his little project. If he stole data, that is on him." The whispers started then. I heard the words data theft and fraud ripple through the crowd, replacing the earlier murmurs of genius and innovation. "Mr. Sterling turned his back on the stage. "We are suspending all due diligence immediately," Sterling said to his associate. "Kill the wire transfer." Evan scrambled off the stage, rushing toward me. He looked sweaty and desperate, his eyes wide with a frantic, pleading energy. He grabbed my hands before I could pull away. "Marissa, baby, look," he panted, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps. "We can fix this. I can explain to them that it was a misunderstanding. We can go back to how it was. You and me, we were a good team. Right. You love me. Don't do this." I looked at him. I looked at the sweat on his forehead and the terror in his eyes. I waited for the anger to rise, but it never came. There was no heartbreak left. There was only the cool, clinical relief of a risk manager who had successfully identified and isolated a toxic asset. "I do not love you, Evan," I said quietly. "I audited you." Sloane tried one last desperate maneuver to save her own dignity. She stepped in, sneering at me. "You are pathetic," she spat. "You think ruining his night changes anything. You were just a placeholder. Marissa, a warm body to pay the bills until he found someone on his level." I looked at her, then down at the manila envelope on the table. "A placeholder also has a paper trail," I replied, my voice flat. "And in a court of law, the paperwork always wins against the word of a co-conspirator." A large hand settled on Evan's shoulder. The head of security had arrived. "Sir," the guard said, his tone leaving no room for argument, "we need you to step away from the guests. You are creating a hostile environment. If you continue to yell, we will have to physically remove you." Evan looked around the room. He realized in that moment that the chair of power had rotated. He was no longer the host. He was the trespasser. I did not have to push the button. I did not have to make a scene. I just stood there in my red dress, watching the truth burn through his lies like a wildland fire, consuming everything he had built on the foundation of my stolen credit. The trial by public opinion was over. The sentencing was about to begin. The house lights dimmed, signaling the start of the keynote presentation, but Evan did not step toward the microphone. Instead, a senior venue manager in a tuxedo walked onto the stage. He held a cream-colored envelope in his hand, the kind used for formal cease and desist notifications. He did not hand it to Evan. He walked straight to the podium and leaned into the microphone. due to pending legal verification regarding intellectual property disputes, the manager announced, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. The presentation for Project Northmark has been suspended from tonight's program. We apologize for the inconvenience. The room went dead silent. It was the kind of silence that usually precedes a crash. Evan stood frozen near the stage, his face a mask of absolute disbelief. He looked at the manager. Then he spun around and pointed a trembling finger directly at me. "She did this," Evan shouted, his voice cracking under the strain. "She is sabotaging me. She is just a bitter ex-girlfriend who wants to ruin my career. You cannot listen to her." He looked around the room for support, but nobody moved. The investors who had been shaking his hand 10 minutes ago were now studying the floor or their drinks. They saw the sweat on his upper lip. They heard the desperation in his tone. They did not see a victim. They saw a liability. I took one step forward. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. The acoustic dynamics of the room carried my words perfectly. "Leave," I said. The word hung in the air, sharp and final. Evan blinked, stunned that I had spoken at all. What he stammered, "You cannot tell me to leave." I am the keynote speaker. I looked him dead in the eye, channeling every ounce of humiliation he had inflicted on me in our living room 3 weeks ago. I summoned the memory of him kicking me out of my own house to impress a woman who was now currently pretending not to know him. "You are making me uncomfortable," I said. It was a perfect mirror, a precise, calibrated reflection of his own cruelty, returned to him with legal standing. The head of security did not hesitate. He stepped up behind Evan, his presence looming large and solid. "Mr. Kessler," the guard said, his voice low but firm. "You need to come with us. We have been asked to ensure the safety and order of the event. You are being asked to vacate the premises immediately. For the first time in our relationship, the power of expulsion belonged to me." Evan looked frantically to his left, searching for his partner in crime. "Sloan," he called out, tell them we have the rights." But Sloan was already moving. She had stepped back into the shadows of the pillars, her phone pressed to her ear as if she were taking an urgent call. She did not look at him. She did not acknowledge his voice. She was doing exactly what parasites do when the host body begins to fail. She was detaching to find a new source. She abandoned him in the middle of the wreckage they had built together. Evan watched her turn her back on him, and I saw the light go out in his eyes. He realized then that he was truly alone. The security guards flanked him, one on each side. They did not drag him, they simply escorted him. It was a humiliating, silent walk of shame past the very people he had tried to impress. As he passed Mr. Sterling, the investor turned his back completely, sipping his scotch. Nobody wanted to be caught in the frame with a bad investment. I stood still until the double doors swung shut behind him. I did not cheer. I did not ask for a glass of champagne. I simply opened my clutch, folded the affidavit and the tracking logs, and snapped the bag shut. The audit was complete. The access had been revoked. I walked out of the ballroom and into the biting cold of the Pittsburgh night. The wind hit my face, sharp and clean. For the last 6 months, my life had been a series of calculations made to support Evan's ambitions and mitigate Sloan's schemes. But as I walked toward my car, I realized the ledger was finally balanced. The road ahead was empty, dark, and quiet. It was no longer written by a man who saw me as a resource to be exploited. It was written by me, the woman who had learned the most important lesson of risk management, knowing exactly when to cut your losses and leave, so you can win where it actually matters. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Please drop a comment below, letting me know where you are tuning in from. I would love to connect and hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this revenge drama, please subscribe to the Victoria Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button to help this story reach even more people.